Hello, hello. You are listening to The Long Game, and I'm your host, David Lee Kim, co-founder of Omniscient Digital. In this episode, we chat with Suzanne Kagan. Suzanne is the VP of Marketing at Anyword, a generative AI platform for performance writing that empowers marketers to create scalable, on-brand content that drives sales and engagement. Over 1 million marketers trust Anyword to manage all their copy and see an average 30% lift in business results. That's crazy. With a background in creative writing, Suzanne turned her passion for writing into a career in marketing, bringing her creativity and storytelling skills to a wide range of B2B and B2C tech companies over the past 15 years. In this conversation, we talk about the hype cycle of generative AI and how Anyword has a clear position in the market to differentiate themselves from the hundreds of AI startups being founded every single day. For context, she joined Anyword the month after ChatGPT was announced, which is another wild time. We discussed the role of AI tools in a marketer's day-to-day, and Suzanne shares real tangible examples of how she and her team are using Anyword in their marketing efforts. Content quality, of course, is always a point of discussion, and she offers that quality can be a lot more objective than people make it out to be, and a big part of that definition of quality is effectiveness. She also shares her experience moving from strictly content-focused roles into more general marketing leadership roles and how she developed as a leader. I think you're going to learn a ton from this conversation. Here's my conversation with Suzanne Kagan. Suzanne, welcome to The Long Game.
Thank you, David. I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, I was excited about our conversation, especially with all the news cycles about generative AI and that kind of, the hype cycle continuing. So maybe we can start with a little bit about your background, and I'd love to hear about how you ended up at Anyword, and then we'll go into what's going on over there. So you're currently VP of Marketing at Anyword. Before this, you held a number of other marketing roles, long-ranging career at companies like Aporia, Powtoon, Matomi. Looking back, how do you connect the dots that led you to Anyword?
That's a great question. I think I've had a pretty varied career over time. So I started out actually as a content writer almost 15 years ago. And then my career evolved pretty naturally where I moved from content writer to content manager to marketing manager, head of marketing, director of marketing, until eventually where I am now. I was always looking to learn and to grow in my next role. So that's something that kind of came natural as a progression. But I did decide consciously at some point to make a shift from content marketing to marketing management. And that happened around the time that I came to Matomi. And throughout that time, what had happened is I had worked for a lot of different industries. I kind of got a feel for what I liked, what I didn't like, what I was interested in. And I also had a very interesting move I wanted to make just in terms of being a bit more big picture, getting a bit more involved on the strategic level, having my hands in a lot of different other areas of marketing that interested me, that I kind of observed around me as I was a content marketer. And I got some really interesting opportunities from mentors along the way who then helped me kind of grow my career. And so that was kind of where I started, from a writer to the marketing transition, worked across a lot of different industries, from B2C to B2B, B2D at one point, but also in ad tech, in mobile apps, video communications, as you mentioned, AI. And so, yeah, so I got to try and test out a lot of different areas and saw what really hit. And my last company was also an AI company, but more on the dev tech side. And that's where I kind of hit the AI bug. And when I heard about Anyword and I saw that they were looking for a VP marketing, I was really interested in joining. And this was before the ChatGPT explosion.
Yeah.
Just found it super relevant as somebody who came from writing, also loved AI, and wanted to kind of merge these two worlds together.
Oh, I can't wait to dig into what it was like jumping in during when a lot of those things got announced. One thing you did notice that I find really relevant to folks that I speak to, maybe people reaching out for mentorship and how to get into like marketing leadership, is this idea of breaking out of, I guess, the content silo and getting a role with more responsibility beyond content. How did you navigate that process? Like, what did you do in order to build trust so that someone or your manager at the time would say, yep, Suzanne's ready to take on like more than a content program? Because I find that there's sort of a ceiling that people run into there.
I definitely noticed that ceiling for myself, even at some point. Like I had already been doing content, I think, for around like I want to say like 6-7 years. And I had written every different type, and I started managing other content writers, managing freelancers and building that out. But I really just wanted to like expand. And I remember actually actively going to my manager at the time. This was back when I had started at Matomi. And I went to my manager and I said, I would love to kind of shift to more marketing management and expand my skill set and learn more. And she was really game, but we didn't have a position at the time. No, she kept giving me more and more responsibility. I was managing the blog, managing social. Matomi actually had, it owned essentially like 8 different brands through different mergers, and was like a 500-person company with about like a 7-person marketing team at the time. It was a bit insane. And at one point, what happened is that the company actually restructured and they let go of most of that marketing team. And so it ended up being me and my VP marketing and a designer. And she was like, congratulations, Suzanne, you've been promoted. You wanted to be a marketing manager, and here you are. And so overnight, I got, 10 times more responsibility. And that really was the test for me of like, is this something that I wanted? And it was helpful having that writing and content background because, the way that it had worked up until then is that, hey, the marketing manager, product marketing manager, sales, they come to you and they say, hey, I need this. And now you're basically talking to yourself, Suzanne, I need this. Okay. Building out this program. So a lot of that was like my marketing school. And it was really helpful that my VP marketing at the time actually came from a similar background. Like she had also studied creative writing like I did. She had been a writer before she transitioned to marketing management. So I think she saw a lot of herself in me and was able to inspire and mentor me along that way. And then after I learned as much as I possibly could there, I saw that there was a position for a senior marketing manager at Peltoon. And then I moved there and opportunity struck again, which actually led to me leading that marketing team.
Yeah, I think I saw, maybe it was on your LinkedIn, that you were there for a month as like a senior marketing manager. And then within a month, you ended up reporting directly to the CEO and like running the whole function. What was that like? Yeah, that must have been like really fast paced, I imagine.
It was awesome. It was wacky and it was awesome. I came in, I remember I was hired by this fantastic CMO. And she had sent actually a message to me the day before I started and said, I'm sorry, but I've decided to leave the company. And so the person who had hired me, the CMO, had left the day before I started. So I came in and there was a marketing function, there was a marketing team that existed. Peltoon had been around for a while. It had actually been around since like 2012. It had built up a really strong following. I think at the time they had around 18 million users. Like, there was no lead gen problem. It was really great, but they were repositioning and they were just about to launch their enterprise solution. And I came in and I was like, okay, so what do I do here? Who built out this program? And the CEO was like, you'll find your space. And so I just got to work. There was essentially like a vacancy. We were all trying to work together. I first started working with the team itself, marketing ops, the content, and so on. And actually, we started launching the enterprise solution and started making optimizations to our campaign strategy. And I remember, like, within a month, the CEO brought me into his room and was like, Suzanne, how would you feel about leading this team? Where who will be the acting CMO and I will lead this team? And I was like, terrified.
So
But
that part's
yeah.
interesting to me because when I try to put myself in your shoes, I think about, okay, there's already a marketing team in place. The CMO just left. You come in and you're leading the team all of a sudden when there's already people who have been at the company longer than you. Like, how did you work through those feelings, or like that seems like a bit of a challenging position to be in.
So I started out I started out small, you know. My goal at the time, it wasn't like, hey guys, you know, we've been working together for a month. You've all been here longer than me. Some of you are more senior than me.
Hmm.
Um, like I remember to those who have been more senior, have been in that company longer. I remember even talking to them when that happened, just being like, you know, would you be okay with this? Like, is this, you know, do you have any aspirations to, you know, to step into that leadership, you know, into that position or to step up in certain ways? And it just turned out that the people who were in those positions, first of all, were super humble and were really happy doing what they were doing. And they did
Yeah.
not want to lead. And so I said, okay, you know, that's fine. So I said, let's try this out, you know. And it was an amazing learning experience for me, but also gave me an opportunity to step into those shoes and see what I would like to do. It's almost like, you know, if you want to see if something will work, you know, but you were too scared, that was like the perfect opportunity. Um,
Yeah, I
and
appreciate that you
and it
kind of
worked out
just
really well.
I appreciate you just addressed it directly versus not addressing it and actually having a conversation, because it probably could have, I can see that playing out and being a little bit awkward if you didn't address it directly.
Yeah. No, it definitely could be. Like you want people to be on board, and also like my management style it shifted over time. At that point, you know, my goal was like, okay, I'm here with you. I'm always in companies where, you know, even if I'm managing, I'm still doing, you know, there is a lot of heavy duty kind of like hands-on because it's startups, and startups, you tend
Yeah.
to do a lot of hands-on strategy at the same time. But I think in this particular instance, like they appreciated the work I had done. They appreciated the structure I had already brought, the optimizations I was making to make their lives better too. They saw me chipping in, and I said, like, we're in this together, you know.
Yeah.
And so I started out as kind of like leading, but I wasn't like, hey, you know, do this, do this, do this, do this. Like
Yeah.
the delegation is something I actually had to learn over time, and I started doing that more later.
Yeah, sounds like you're doing a great job leading now that you're at Anywhere too. So I want to shift us and now start focusing on Anywhere a little bit. I
Yeah,
was
sure.
just digging back through the archives a little bit, trying to remember how or when generative AI started becoming part of like normal conversation with everyday people that aren't in tech. And I think it started happening around November when ChatGPT got announced and all of that. I saw in my research that you joined Anyword in December 2022. I'm sure conversations were happening way before that, but I imagine that you joined kind of peak hype when all these tools were getting announced and all that. So we'd love to hear, like, what was it like joining a generative AI company during that time when there was so much of a spotlight on the industry?
So it was awesome. It was awesome, and really, also, yeah, it's a little bit crazy too, because, you know, you come, also the hiring process, when you're starting to look for a job, you know, it's not like, okay, from today to tomorrow, you take that job. So when I started applying, and I was, you know, having conversations with the CEO and with the team before I came on board, you know, I imagined our strategy to be completely different. I imagined our ICPs to be differently. I imagined the way that I would come in and help and optimize this program to be very different. And then you're right, like basically 2 weeks before I started, ChatGPT was this overnight sensation, this success. And I was like, oh, okay, so this is different. Because what it did was it changed actually the challenge of what Anyword had at the time. Anyword had been trying to explain to the public for a couple of years since they launched in 2021, hey, there's this amazing technology, and people would just be like, wow, this is magic. And then ChatGPT came and was like, no, it's not magic. And now everybody has it. And what was cool about this opportunity, at least for Anyword, and it's one of the reasons I picked Anyword as a company, is that it had a built-in differentiator. So what was nice about it was that I was able to shift the conversation on, hey, now you can scale your content with AI writing, of, hey, now you can actually create high-performing content at scale with predictive analytics, which is something that was built into Anyword from the beginning. And that makes for a much more interesting conversation and more focused ICP as well. And it also just changes the nature of who you're targeting and the efforts that you're going to make to reach them. So I thought it was really cool because we got to actually tell a more authentic story instead of explaining all this background that everybody else had been trying to explain, and trying to compete in a space where it sounded like too many people were doing the same thing. So for me, it was a nice opportunity.
I saw a stat that there's I think you shared it maybe, that there are 500 new AI startups a week. And there's so many of these generative AI tools that, in my opinion, do almost exactly the same thing, built on the same models, maybe a different UI. And I have a friend who works in generative AI as well, and she made a joke that she's into extreme sports because she's working in generative AI in 2023. There's always things changing on a drop of a dime. And I was going to ask you, maybe you can elaborate a little bit more. I was going to ask about how you managed to cut through the noise and grow to, I think, 1 million users, right? How are you differentiating such a crowded space? It sounds like the analytics and performance piece was part of that. Could you share a little bit more about that? Maybe without sharing your secret sauce, but it sounds like that was a key factor.
Sure. So I think what was really helpful, I think, is that our leadership understood that this was going to happen. I think while it was a surprise to everyone, it was a surprise to me that ChatGPT would become such a sensation. He was pretty convinced even a couple of years ago, saying hey guys, generative AI is going to be integrated into your entire marketing tech stack. And people are like, what? I have no idea what you're talking about. And then overnight, ChatGPT was kind of the teaser into this, and you have this amazing technology. And as I said, Anyword, it had built-in predictive analytics and scoring. It has its own homegrown model, which basically scores copy and all kind of content based on a score of 0 to 100, telling you how likely it is to actually convert your users, or, depending on the use case, to build engagement or to drive more sales. And it has built-in marketing UI. You're right. Others also have, marketing UI, but that's based off of one specific model. And I think the analytics was kind of our way to step away from that from the very beginning. That was kind of the aha moment for the users, that when they are comparing different platforms and they're coming from self-serve, they would see, oh, wow, this is so cool. I can actually understand how well my content is going to resonate with my audience before I publish. So that was where Anyword was the day after ChatGPT and even before. And then after ChatGPT came, and as part of the plan, we started building out a much stronger, more comprehensive business solution, which actually is our copy analytics platform. Because what we understood is that there's so much more at this point than creating content and scaling content. You want content that will actually drive success. So Anyword is very different from others because you can connect your channels. It will learn insights. It will understand what is the copy that's resonating with your audience. You have other features that you're building on in terms of your brand voice. You have specific target audiences, which our AI learns from. You can train our AI on your target audiences, on your brand, and on your past performance data, and then actually even build predictive analytics from that data to essentially create a benchmark and then create more successful campaigns. So it has it's a pretty comprehensive, it's this mix between performance and brand, and it kind of brings demand gen, product marketing, content marketing all together in one kind of AI writing platform.
Well, as someone who's very familiar and has played around with a lot of these tools, you've now put Anyword in a different bucket in my mind, where we work with a lot of clients who want to produce a lot of content, and recently, less so now, but a lot of folks would ask, hey, can you just produce cheap content with AI? And the question I always pose is, well, why do you need to produce content? And they're like, oh, we want traffic.
Yeah.
And I'm saying, well, let's say you do produce content with ChatGPT and you rank in position one and someone clicks on it, but it's just not valuable to the reader. Like, what then?
Yeah.
Like, the goal is to get engagement and like get them to trust your brand, right? And lots of folks, some folks see the reasoning behind that and say, oh, okay, like the content actually isn't very good enough yet. Others are still pretty adamant that they want to produce thousands of blog posts with generative AI. And we say, hey, there might be someone else who'd be able to help you with that. But what I appreciate about what you're saying for Anyword is, and I'll contrast this to what I'm seeing other companies do. A lot of companies are leaning very heavily into the brand consistency aspect of their tools and how it helps write into voice and tone. But you're going into it seems like Anywhere does help with that, but you're also focused on, well, is this content performing?
Yeah, that has always been, we've always been performance driven, performance first. Like that was the first AI model that actually was created, even before the generative AI that we had. And we kind of mixed the two together. And then we understood, the marketing teams, they do need that brand aspect. They do need to make sure they have a consistent tone of voice. They do need to train AI because you invest, I'm coming from this place too. Like you invest a lot in your brand. You invest in that tone of voice. This is part of how you differentiate yourself. This is the way that you communicate to users. And so that's just what I call table stakes. You need to have that in your product to begin with. And the question is, what can you add that's new? And what I like about Anywhere, what I liked about joining a company that actually has something unique and different is that there is something that's actually providing value to marketing teams, something new. It's taking a different approach to content. It's also making sure that we can connect that content to their marketing goals.
Yeah. So how, if you're open to sharing some examples, how are you or your team using Anyword in your day-to-day right now? Like what are the most valuable uses for it?
So there is the aspect, first of all, of scaling, but it also depends on the use case that we're using. So every single person on my team, first of all, I'm in a startup. I don't have a huge team. I have about like 5 to 7 people on the team, and in various roles. And so our head of content will use it first, for the ideation, for creating that, his drafts when he's creating blog posts, and also validating his own content against the content that Anywhere will create. Because, he might write really fast, almost at AI writing speed. And then he also wants to have different variations and see what is going to be the right subject line he's going to create here. And he can actually see which will resonate better with our audience. But it's also like campaign scaling, connecting it to our goals. We use our custom scoring model as well, where we actually feed our data into Anyword. And then we have a base point for our ads. Our demand gen, they use it to create the ads. And then we just make some slight edits if there's something that we want to perfect. I do think it's still important at this point to have that content review approval process because because now everybody has this magical tool. They have the power to write who didn't write before. So our marketing ops, who wasn't a writer before, he also has this tool so that he can create all of our nurturing emails and sequences. And then we also review that with our content and say, okay, yeah, this is good. This is good. Here, a tiny tweak. Here, a tiny tweak. So we also use it in that way. I use our prompt for marketing research all the time, which is very similar to ChatGPT. But this way I have it also like within Anyword's workspace and its platform, and I can save everything. We have like collaborative workspaces and documentation so that we can share amongst the team when we're creating a campaign. But we use essentially all the tools all the time. My favorite though, and this is kind of like my nerdy coming from brand side as well, is that, it's always hard to get people to actually speak in the same tone of voice. So we have a one-click tone of voice, which you share as kind of your template, and then you can actually click default, and that becomes the tone of voice for everybody in the workspace.
Oh.
So that's at least this baseline. So you have the goal they connected to, you have the right tone of voice, We have our personas built into Anyword as well, so they can say, okay, I want to reach out to a growth marketer, say, I want to reach out to content marketer, I want to reach out to this one. And so all of those are checked off. And then all we need to do is just make smaller edits, or if there's another point we didn't think about we want to add, just that way. Like, there's
I
the use cases are endless.
I appreciate you sharing such specific examples, because there was a point when people were asking us about how they should be using these tools. And what I realized is people were kind of overthinking, or they had very novel ideas of what these tools should be able to do, probably because of all the Twitter and LinkedIn influencers sharing these generative AI videos and things that they spent hours prompting to get. And I told a lot of them that, hey, these use cases are not novel. They help you produce content faster. Like, focus on that and don't worry about all the other crazy things people are building, because that's for the tinkerers. Like, if you're focused on how to do marketing more efficiently and better, just use it to like write better content. And I think some folks weren't very satisfied with that, but I think it helps simplify these use cases in their head instead of all these other things that they could be doing. It was like, nope, just don't try to force some use case. Like, you have your use cases, stick to these.
Exactly. And it really depends on the team and the type of content that they want to create. It's like you said, you don't want to, I strongly believe in creating valuable content. So I want to use our AI as part of that process as if it's another team member. And so in the same way that if you have another team member who just joins, they could be the best writer in the world, but they still need to be onboarding. You still need to train it. And then you have that, and they just happen to write at the speed of light, and that's amazing. But even if I had the best writer in the world, even our head of content, he'll also send me stuff and be like, hey, I'd love to have a second eye, fresh eyes on this, take another approach. What do you think? It could be amazing content, always is, but I always go back to, is that going to achieve our goal? Is that for the right use case? And so there's always going to be like little minor kind of tweaks there.
Yeah. Have you, out of curiosity, have you A/B tested, like, all right, here's a subject line that your paid marketer wanted to use, and then maybe Anyword proposed like some edits? Did you like test which one would perform better and like see that Anyword actually performed better?
It actually does perform better. I did test it. I'm also that kind of like snobby, intuitive, I was such a great writer, I must know better. And I was like, no, it can't be right. That's what I did even before I joined the company. Like, I wanted to know this writer was better. And I did test it in email subject lines. I did test it in social posts. And I was like, oh, it is getting more engagement. Well, look at that. Interesting. And like when it actually had a higher score, I would test between a lower score and a higher score. And the higher score actually did perform better. And that was just cool. Like, I love it also just as a former writer who, you know what's good content, but you don't have the data to back it up. And here it actually validates that. It's not just a hunch. You actually have data to support that. And I think that's really powerful for somebody who's in that role, to actually finally be able to like back it up with data.
Yeah, I'd love to spend some time on this topic, because whether it's talking to clients or prospects or other content marketers, the conversation ends up being about like content quality. Like, we want high quality content. And a lot of people will say that quality is subjective. I think on a previous podcast, my co-founder Alex has made the case that you can make quality more objective, and because a subjective definition doesn't help with process and moving things along the production process, whereas at least having some company defined quality standards will help improve like the process and like the feedback cycles and all of that. How do you think about content quality, and like, I guess how Anyword might help with that?
So I don't think quality is actually so subjective. I used to say, when I was like looking to hire for content writers before kind of the AI writing boom, I used to say that I could kind of take a look at a writing sample and automatically, like within, 10 seconds, know if that person was a good writer or not. And it does get to a point for those who know the difference between good writing and great writing. Like, I don't think it's that subjective. Now, for companies, they'll have different standards. Like, they'll need it to be in their brand voice. They'll need it to engage with their target audience. But maybe what we should separate out what's quality versus what's actually effective. Because what companies need is they need marketing content that's effective, that will achieve their goal. And there's a difference between writing well. Like, you can be an amazing writer and write well, but that does not actually make you a great marketing writer. You know, you still need to have that connection to, like, all right, I'm writing a blog post, and well, it's really well written, but is that actually going to engage the user? Is that actually going to provide them with value? And there's a big difference between writing well and providing valuable content, or content that actually motivates them to act. And I think that's the difference. And if we're talking about it from the place of marketing, high quality should connect to better performance. It should connect to more value for that user.
Wow, I love how well you put that, because it feels like some of these conversations around quality are maybe the wrong conversation to be had, where, I don't know, people might start sharing what they define as quality, but you make this connection between, well, shouldn't effectiveness be an input to quality? Like, if it's not working, if it's not doing anything to help the marketing efforts, is it actually quality? So that's reframing how I'm thinking about it a little bit, and how I'm going to have these conversations moving forward.
That's awesome. It's something I go on and on about with lots of people. And they're like, okay, Suzanne, stop. Like,
yeah. The thing I kind of try to remind people is, when they're talking about whether a piece of content is good quality or high quality or not, and they're trying to think about it from the perspective of a reader, and my pushback or challenge is sometimes, hey, what if a reader doesn't care about the things that you care about? What if they just want to get the information? Yeah. They don't care about if you use this word versus this word. They don't care about, like, all the examples that you're thinking about. Like, they just want to get this main point, and they're going to look for the answer and probably just leave. And I guess the question is, are they getting what they need?
It's true. And also, the way that we digest content is so different from we did in the past. You know, people used to read these kind of like long-winded blog posts that had this very long story in it. And you had to have a setup and have an intro. And it's just not the way that people digest content anymore. So it's not really high quality content anymore. Again, it could be well written, but like, sometimes people just need to know, okay, these are the bullet points we're going to address. I don't need all this fluff, but I do need to have it sharp and focused and authentic. And I think where you can use AI is, it helps you build out that outline. It helps you build out that content. It even creates, it could be like the third draft that you would have already had in revision, and you adding your personal experience there, and you make it more authentic, and you share your story in there. And I think that's where you can find this perfect merge between like AI and human. Okay.
Yeah. So I love the direction of this conversation of using these tools to augment your team and their skill set. Where do you see the future of marketing and, I guess, the marketing skill set going, especially with more of these tools now being embedded in essentially all our software nowadays? How do you see, like, the marketing function evolving?
So I think that this is a great opportunity for marketers to expand their skill sets. And I think those that actually leverage this technology and expand their skills. So if you are, for example, like a demand gen and you weren't a writer, but now you have this at your disposal, and you're able to connect your analytical brain to this content, that's already magic right there. You're able to speed up the process. It used to be that demand gen was waiting around for content marketing, or they were waiting around for product marketing. And it isn't about like replacing those functions. It's just about creating the draft of what you expected to begin with, creating a better brief for the people, or enabling them to just edit it so that they can work on more time-consuming tasks. So you already have some of those, you have that baseline that you need, whether it's your 50 ads for Google, or you need, your social, like your paid social, or you need your email nurturing. So you have all that built out. You already know. It makes people a little bit more intentional in their processes instead of just kind of like leaving it on the side, and they become stronger full stack marketers. And then it actually just streamlines the process so that the marketing team can be more effective. It's the same with the content marketers. They don't need to create all the content of just trying to like check it off the list. They have so many things they need to create, whether it's blog posts or landing pages, ads, emails. And so this way they can review the pieces, make edits, fine tune it, and then they can focus on other efforts as well that will make a greater impact, that will also stand out for their company a little bit more.
Yeah, I love this idea of becoming a more self-sufficient general marketer, full stack marketer, you called it, where there's no longer an excuse to say, I'm waiting for the content team to give me the content. Like they can just get like one of these tools for free and at least start a first draft. And maybe it's not the best one, but it gives them something to work with than feeling bottlenecked, especially with these smaller teams nowadays. How do you see the impact of building out a team? Like, my guess is maybe you can do more with a smaller marketing team now.
I don't know if it's about downsizing it. I think it's more about first leveraging and onboarding the team that you have to use these tools so that you can see where you can go. You can set a baseline and then see what you want. I think it would also impact the people that you do bring on board. You will want people who are leveraging these tools. You don't want people who are afraid of these tools, because what will happen is that your competition will be leveraging these tools and then you'll actually be behind. So there's this kind of saying, there was a lot of fear early on when this technology was coming out, oh, it's going to replace jobs. And I remember somebody said, and I don't remember who, but it was like on all these posts on LinkedIn, and you saw this, it's not going to be the technology. It's going to be a human who's leveraging this technology effectively, who's going to replace the person who doesn't want to use that technology. And I think it's really about that. It's just, I think people will look for those who aren't, I won't call them prompt engineers, because I have a whole thing about prompt engineering. But it's more about the people who will say, okay, they aren't afraid of this technology. This technology can help me become a better marketer. I can scale. I can access, talents I didn't have before. And those are the people that are going to get ahead.
Yeah. I have been experiencing this firsthand. I mean, I'm using these tools almost every day, maybe not in every single workflow, but for, say, doing really complex formulas in Google Sheets. I have friends who can program in like a single cell in Google Sheets. I can't do that, but now I can just go to one of these tools like ChatGPT and ask it to write me a formula, and it doesn't get it right the first time, but I can figure it out much more quickly than trying to write it out on my own, or not even just analysis, but getting a tool to just reformat and edit my writing is much better than waiting for, say, our editor who is working on client work to prioritize me, which I don't want them to do. So it's unblocking me significantly.
Exactly. It opens up so many bottlenecks that existed before. And that also just means that we can all first of all, we can get more work done, but not just work. We can be a bit more intentional about the work that we do, because we're not just trying to, check off this list of things that need to get done.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on prompt engineering? You
kind of
opened that thread, so I need to hear that.
So I think there's this, I find it a little bit bizarre. It's like you have this technology, and it's what I mentioned before, that you do need to onboard and train this technology to suit your needs. And right now, since it's the first iteration, people are saying, okay, everyone should hire prompt engineers, and this is the future. And I just don't believe it. Like, I don't believe that the future is prompt engineering. I believe that marketers will still be marketers, sales will still be sales, and it isn't about, becoming an engineer to make this technology for marketing. What I like about Anyword is it's not prompt engineering. You don't need to engineer anything. It's literally built for marketing. So I think that more companies will come out that are actually built for the needs that you have. You don't need to become an engineer to make a tool that was not meant for you to use in that way, for it to be effective. There will just be other tools on the market, and it will become more sophisticated over time. ChatGPT will become more sophisticated over time. It already is. Generative AI is being embedded into all of our existing, our stack, essentially, so that you can use it as you were intended to use without having to think, how can I engineer you to work for me?
Yeah, I can appreciate that take. I've often wondered whether some of these tools are a little too general, where I try to give it a very specific prompt and it gives me something very general back. And I'm like, yeah, this isn't helpful. I'm going to go try another tool or just write it on my own because what I get back is just not helpful.
This is exactly what I hear from marketers all the time. And it goes back to context. It's like, if you have a new employee, you have an intern, you have somebody, and all of a sudden you're like, hey, do this. They have no background. They don't know who your company is. They don't know your brand. They don't know your brand rules. They don't know what worked for your marketing. They don't know that you already tried that 15 different times. And that's essentially how most LLMs and large language models are right now. And this is why it's so important to provide and teach it. And this is where the prompt engineering right now comes into place. And that's why it's essential. But that will go away over time. They will get smarter. You'll be able to automatically train. And that's essentially what we do. Like, we have an extension that we release. And it's actually for ChatGPT. And so we can bring all of that analytics, the performance data, the tone of voice, this brand rules onto ChatGPT. And then marketers can even use ChatGPT using all of the functionality that came from Anyword. So it just gives them more freedom to be able to use that as well.
Interesting. So you kind of abstracted away the trained generative AI, and you're now you can now layer that onto the more general LLMs or those tools.
Exactly.
I don't know if I'm using the right phrases.
No, it's fine. It's all like lingo that we all created, right? A year ago. But exactly, it's like you can build that basis of what you know is your marketing, your messaging bank, your brand rules, your tone of voice, your performance data, your campaign data, and teach it automatically in a click to a program like ChatGPT, make it going from non-generic to a marketing tool. Because all of these, ChatGPT was not built for marketing. It was, it's built to serve many, many, many different purposes. Whether it's development, whether it helps with marketing, whether it helps with writing, it helps you, create your diet plan. It helps you do all of these different things. It's a very, very smart assistant. But you need to provide it with that context of what your job to be done is.
Yeah. And I think this conversation on how the marketing function is kind of evolving and how marketer skill sets might need to evolve, I think is a good tie into what we were discussing before we hit record around the necessity for marketers to be able to think beyond maybe their specific role to see the bigger picture of things. I'd love to hear you elaborate a little bit more on the necessity of that skill set and how you maybe help nurture more of that ability to see the bigger picture.
So I think every marketer would benefit from seeing the bigger picture. And I think that's usually the people that I notice that tend to become marketing managers, that tend to become more senior marketers over time, are the people who aren't just focused on their specific skill set or their specific role. They start asking a lot of questions. They want to understand how campaigns work. They want to understand how the strategy works. And I think that every marketer can expand their skill set if they want to, Mm-hmm. So I think that, for example, you don't have to be stuck in a content bubble or product marketing bubble, depending on where you see yourself in the future. And this is an excellent opportunity because you can learn so much from AI. Not only do you teach it your context, but also it can teach you. You can decide what it is you want to learn about without taking, long courses. You can do market research. You can understand more what's the life and the functionality of other marketers on the team. I think there will need to be a lot more collaboration at the end of the day. So if, performance marketers are getting new writing skills, so that expands their skill set. And if you have content marketers who are gaining more insights and they're learning a lot more and they're leveraging new technology, then they might find that they have a new interest in marketing ops. They might find that they also have interest in campaigns or in growth marketing. And this is just an excellent way for people to evolve and grow past where they were at the beginning. I think it's less siloed marketing, and now it's more full stack marketers, more tech savvy marketers coming out to play.
Yeah, and maybe even extending that idea of the big picture even more is, I know in my experience, the way I was able to essentially, I guess, move up the ranks in marketing was I spoke to people outside of marketing too. Like I spent like 6 years at HubSpot, and I was getting coffees with product managers and making friends with the sales team and the customer support team and the finance team, like just whoever was nearby, that I wanted to learn from. And that gave me a lot more ideas to work from and understand the growth strategy of business as a whole, to then have more ideas of, oh, wait, how come we don't try these things in marketing then? Like, let me go talk to more people on a marketing team about what I learned from the product team. And now we can try some new things.
Absolutely. I think that, the more that you're able to collaborate with other people within your company, the more that you'll actually learn. This was something I learned actually when I went to a very small startup, and it was pretty much me as a marketer building up a marketing program from scratch, and the product and R&D were next door in an open space. Mm-hmm. And that was the first time I actually got to learn and experience from the R&D and the huge impact that they have, because before then, R&D was kind of like this siloed area where marketers never kind of ventured into that space, and they're working on this and they're thinking that way. And some of my best ideas, especially depending on who your ICP is, like that was when I worked in a dev tech company, and I was like, hey guys, you know this better than I do. You know this target audience of like machine learning engineers. You're an engineer. What do you think about this idea? What do you think? Would this tactic work for you? How do you feel about this? Is this the right strategy? I would even talk to them like, do you think this would make sense for our go-to market? And it was shocking, the insights that I got from that, especially when you're thinking about like new strategies, growth hacking that we wanted to do. And they would come up with like really interesting insights that just a marketer wouldn't think of at all.
Yeah.
Just providing like, well, this would be really useful. And I was like, okay, how can we turn that into a campaign? And that was just a super cool experience.
Yeah, I love that. One of the things we've always tried to encourage more of is we have this philosophy or principle of leveling up the content marketing universe. And ironically, that means thinking less about content marketing and more about the rest of the marketing function and the rest of the business orgs. And so I love hearing kind of your story of how you were able to connect many of those different dots across the org.
Yeah, there's so many intelligent people that you work with, and they have a lot of different insights. They're being marketed to all the time. And I think it's really about, you just have to be so connected to your ICP. Most of the time you're not actually marketing to marketers. And I think you have to remember, if you're marketing to sales, or if you're marketing to dev, or if you're marketing to, I don't know, media buyers or HR, those are the people that you need to kind of sit in a conversation with, understand where their communities are, not just listen to sales calls, but like go to their meetups, understand what they're talking about, what is their channel like. One of, my past companies, it was Reddit. They were all over Reddit, and you would just kind of sit there and see what is the topics that they're talking about. And that kind of formed the content that you would talk about. It also helped you understand more of like what resonated with them. What did they care about? And I think that's the area that provides the most value, actually, when it comes to marketing.
Yeah. So I want to shift gears a little bit. And this next question I always ask of any working parent, selfishly, so I can mentally prepare for when I'm a parent, which is sometime in the future. Everyone says that. How do you manage being a parent working in a leadership role in such a fast-paced industry? Like, I would feel like I always need to be on, but it seems like you're able to manage the boundaries a little bit.
It's hard, you know? It's always going to be hard. I think there's always that balance, especially like my daughter is 3. So finding that balance over the last 3 years, first you have to find out like, how do I become a human being after I have a child? And then it's like, how do I work and, you know, be a good mom? And then the question is, after you're able to actually compartmentalize and figure that all out, is how do I actually have a life outside of that? That's the trickiest part, I think. A lot of people are stuck just in the, okay, I'm a mom, I'm working, I'm doing my best. This is how you try to make it, you try to make it as effective as possible and be present. And I think the key, first of all, is depending on the organization that you join. So one of the lucky things at Anywhere is there are a lot of people that also have kids. And so there's a nature of people, like you can go home like early, once or twice a week, pick up your kid, spend time with them, and know that this is time that's dedicated for you and your kid. And I think that's important, is kind of setting up those boundaries of like, this is the time I'm going to be as present as possible. And it's also important that they have a role model and understand that working is important too. It's something for her to see that I'm passionate about something is important for me. So having that and creating those boundaries is what's most helpful. But it is a challenge. I think that's a challenge for most parents.
Yeah, I can appreciate that a lot after speaking to so many people and now learning to better empathize with it, to be completely honest. One of the other guests I had on the pod, his name is Cash. He actually shared when he first became a father, there were some performance issues at work because he was having trouble juggling and like managing being a new parent and all that stuff. And it was one of the few times I heard someone kind of share that. But I think the common theme is set boundaries and expectations with your coworkers and your team, and let them know when you're available, and like make time for yourself and like for family, or else you're gonna feel like you're always jumping from one thing to another.
And I think it's different for moms versus dads, because if you imagine like most dads, they might take off like 1 week, 2 weeks, but a lot of them like they go back to work almost immediately, and you just had this huge transition, and you're not sleeping either.
Wait, and like pat leave or paternity leave is like very short?
It's less of a thing, depending on who's there. Like for me, I took a 6-month maternity leave. That was a huge benefit for me, that I was able to actually take that time and bond and kind of, figure things out. But I think I know a lot of dads who basically go back to work after 2 weeks. Like, how crazy is that,
I didn't think about that. It's clear I'm not experiencing this. Huh. Yeah, I suppose having a longer time frame allows for that transition a little bit more.
And I think it really depends on the company that you're working in, how they set you up for like success. Like if they just expect you to jump right in, which a lot of companies will, but like there's ways to make it more comfortable. Like you start with, okay, I'm going to do 80%, or some people start with 50% so that you can ease your way, make them more comfortable, and kind of see where you were, what's new, because it's also this bizarre thing that happens where all of a sudden you're there one day and then you're not. And then you come back and then the world changed without you being there. So it's just a really interesting experience.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm imagining kind of leaving for a few months and working at a generative AI startup. It's going to be a different product.
So that would be different. Like I came here, I already had things set. I know, I like created my perfect work-life balance, and then I was like, let's get things going,
Yeah, I love that. Well, I know we're coming up on time, so I have a few questions to start wrapping up, and then we'll call it. All right. So what is one opinion you have about business that you think people would disagree with?
So this is just, from my experience speaking to a lot of CEOs or people that are creating startups, a lot of times they'll start marketing a little bit too late. Like you can start marketing, especially like even those who already got seed funding, like they'll wait sometimes to bring in their first in-house marketer or senior marketer, like 6 months, a year, even later. And I think that's a mistake. I know companies that will like they'll have like 60 people in that company and they still didn't set up marketing. They were like, oh, what did I need? Like I have sales. But it's never too early to start building your brand. You know, you don't want to just launch and like you have a website and then you have absolutely no audience. You should start building out that list. You should start building up your social profile. You should start building out, like, ensure that you have a website, do market research, speak to your target audience, make sure that you're on your way to finding a product market fit when you actually do launch. So I think that these are some of the things that businesses should focus on, that marketing's essential from day one.
Yeah, I think we're slowly, or at least from anecdotal conversations, people are starting to slowly move over into that direction because they realize, wait, we don't know what our messaging or positioning is against in the market. And they already have like a whole product built out and everything. It's probably something they could have figured out sooner.
They do that all the time. It drives me nuts. Or the worst sometimes is like they did the messaging themselves and they kind of half-assed it. And then they went live and they realized like, oh, this doesn't resonate with anyone.
Yeah,
like nobody's coming to our site. Nobody's signing up. It was. I came to a company where they actually did believe in marketing, and they did the research, but then they launched with a site where it didn't match their personas at all, and I had to actually spend a lot of time rebuilding everything that they had launched with, from the very beginning. So that can happen too.
Yeah, I know earlier in the year, there's a lot of talk about marketers losing their jobs. And I think I'm 100% confident that we will have our jobs for many years to come.
I agree. Also, I don't think most founders like doing marketing. So I think that there's always room. Like it's such a multidisciplinary field. With like a wide range of like just the skill set is kind of crazy.
Yeah. All right. So next question, what is one impactful piece of advice that you've been given?
That's a good question. So I think I've been lucky, like I've had some really nice mentors along the way. So I think work-life balance was one that was pretty important that somebody said, because it's very easy in marketing to essentially become a workaholic because there's always more things to get done. So I think being able to set your boundaries and also figuring out what is the point where I won't, burn out. And I think that's really important, especially nowadays. You see that conversation all the time of like kind of employee burnout. So you want to make sure that you're able to set your boundaries. Just because you can continue working, it doesn't mean that you should. You do need to make time for yourself, for your personal life, to be able to think clearly and be a more effective employee.
That is exactly what I needed to hear, because I'm supposed to take a vacation. It's on the calendar, but I'm thinking about the anxiety I'm going to have of not having my laptop. So you were telling me, don't open your laptop, David.
Take the vacation. Take the vacation. Don't do it.
Thank you. What is one book you'd recommend more people read?
So rather than a book, I'm a fiction person because I came from fiction, but I would just say read Kurt Vonnegut.
Okay.
I loved Kurt Vonnegut. One of my favorite books was like Slapstick. It's not amazing, but it's so wacky, and sometimes you just need to make room for something that's creative and wacky, and it makes you think differently. It makes your writing better. It can make your marketing better. It can also just be inspirational. There's so much that you read that's nonfiction anyway. There's so much insights that you're reading. I learn from LinkedIn every day at this point. Just everybody sharing all their like authentic, digestible content. It's amazing. But just reading like a very good fiction book that will kind of put your mind somewhere else, but inspire you in a different way, I think is amazing. Yeah,
I agree. I think you're the first person I've spoken to who has recommended Kurt Vonnegut as something more people should read. I like to have like one nonfiction book and one fiction book going on at the same time, so I can
Yeah.
just choose what mood I'm in. But I haven't read any Kurt Vonnegut, so I'll need to pick
Oh,
up
you have
Slapstick.
to. So, Kurt, maybe not start with Slapstick. That's my favorite, but
Okay,
there's other ones that people recommend more. Um, but definitely check it out. Super easy to read, super wacky and fun. You'll enjoy
I
it.
love wacky. All right. Well, we'll wrap it up here. Where can people find you on the internet?
So they can find me on LinkedIn. You can also reach out to me by email. I'm Suzanne at Anyword.com. I'm always happy to hear from everyone. So, but especially on LinkedIn, that's a great place to reach out to me. And thank you, David. This has been really awesome.
Love it. Suzanne, it was a pleasure to have you on the show. Thanks for making the time.
Likewise. Thanks so much.